Hello, this is Jimmy Mitchell, and we're back with another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, and let's get right into this. First, we have boycott Israel. No U.S. state jobs raid for you, not even if your house is destroyed by a hurricane. Everyone gets help but you. That's a YouTube video from, let's see, um, TRT World. And that is, if you're in one of the states that has one of the boycotts, yeah. It's from 5 years ago, but yeah, some states like Texas, California, and I think New York, they say if you boycott Israel, they won't be able to get any aid, and I think that's something that's got to end. I think we need to have free speech, and I think you should be able to get aid no matter what you say, and I think that's important to have as a precedent. I think if you want to boycott whatever you want to boycott, you should be able to do so. Yeah. Study finds large taxpayer savings with school choice from eric.ed.gov by Rude My Circle Jerk. And that is a good article, I would say, because it's important to note what the studies say on school choice. A lot of people say, "Oh, follow science," but they want the science to be only what they agree with, and a lot of people disagree with school choice, but the science might say otherwise. But science these days is just people kind of trying to justify what they believe, and I would say more it's used to push an agenda more than anything else, like pretty much everything else these days, I would say. And yeah, so push your agenda, but you should be able to push your agenda, I would say. And I think, yeah. So exhausted, fuck bipartisan politics, fuck Citizens United, we are commodities from Chi-Town 20, and that is from the Political Revolution subreddit. It's a deleted post though, so I don't know what it really was, but I do agree with the sentiment. I don't really care for bipartisan politics either. You could also argue they're unipartisan politics, I would say. And Citizens United definitely means we got a lot more propaganda coming out from both of the uniparty branches too, so that's important to remember. We're definitely commodities, I would say, these days too. I agree with that. I usually disagree with Tri-Town, but they're absolutely correct there. Opera GX with the Pride logo to end all Pride logos from Imgur.com, and that is from your officer, and it's two black men kissing. And I think, the rainbow is, it's traditionally for for the pride, but I'm glad that some companies just go all out for just actually do the LGBTQ stuff. And yeah, it reminds me of when Postmates did the bottom friendly menu last year. It's nice to have them do actual LGBT representation instead of just the generic representation that they just do for points, it seems. This is probably still for points too, but at least they're going out a lot of the way. Then we have Justin, U.S. Senate votes to repeal Biden's $400 billion student loan handout from Disclosed TV. And then I posted that. And I said, I have student loans to pay, but it's important to remember that a lot of these student loans are for relatively well-off people who will probably be able to pay them off in due time anyway. Besides, Biden is much more interested in giving stuff to Ukraine than Americans anyway. Sleepy Joe flashes the steal from Chicago Sun-Times by Donald Key. Let's see what that is. How Sleepy Joe flashes. If the president is such a dotard, how does he pantsing the GOP? Well, I think he kind of has the narrative on his side, I would say. So yeah, I definitely do see the incompetent, but yeah, the enemy's most strong, weak as willpower, rights. That's what the general consensus is, to make your opponent, demonize your opponent by saying how weak they are, but also how strong they are. And you can see that along the left, they say Trump is an incompetent buffoon who almost installed himself as dictator for life on January 6, 2021. And you can also see it on the right where they say Biden's incompetent buffoon who's somehow can rig elections fees and is getting us into World War III. You can see it among libertarians as well, kind of the idea of the all-powerful but incompetent bureaucrats. Who do you think should be the next U.S. president? And that's from Strong Ninja 4455. and that's a picture of the White House. And I said, I personally would say get rid of the presidency. Too much centralized authority. Same with the rest of the federal government. I think we need to. Everyone should have their own government, and if they don't want to, if they don't like their current government, they should be able to start their own government. And no one should be forced to be any government that's legitimate. Like I don't think people should be forced to pay taxes or forced to, as long as they uphold the NAP, I would say. But even if even if they don't uphold the NAP, if they have force on their side, I guess they'd be able to do whatever they wanted, I would say. But as long as the people hold them accountable, I would say. The people need to hold other people accountable for breaking the NAP, I would say. The Scandinavian motto, rob the poor and give to the rich by ruining my circles work, and that's the YouTube video from Free to Choose Network. I'd agree, the Scandinavian model is, I think, slowly starting to show it's not the best. It's not as what we think it is. It's not as good as we thought it was, and it's also important to remember that Scandinavian model is definitely helped by this country's small populations, unlike the U.S., which has a very large population. And yeah. Then we have Make Sense from Kage blah blah blah, and that is a link to the Facebook subreddit tweet from Miss Betty Bowers. Update: man who spray painted groomer on ill libraries during Pride Week has been arrested for possession of child pornography. Police also found diapers and dolls around his apartment, including a child-sized doll in his bed. Sutherland has no children and no nieces or nephews. Sometimes it really is just projection, I guess. But you had that one guy in Hawaii as well as projection from the other side, so that's important to remember as well. I think a lot of stuff is projection these days. That's really what politics is drifting and projections, I would say. Those are the two big things that politics is right now. Supreme Court sides with cement mixing company over striking workers, and the latest blow to unions from CEN.com. And, yeah. I definitely think, that you could argue that's bad, but apparently the workers personally left wet cement on their trucks running, and it cost the company money, so that's important to remember as well. So I guess this is a good, I personally don't really care for the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, but I guess this isn't the worst decision they've ever made. NIMBY cities are using your tax dollars to lobby against new housing from Reason.com by Harumph, and I definitely agree. NIMBYs are the worst. Yeah. Yeah, NIMBYs are the worst, and they're going to enforce their values on you. Yeah. Yeah, this one comment there shows based off inspiration. Yeah. That's the thing is yeah, so hopefully they'll get rid of the NIMBYs and we can have less zoning regulations. New anti-transgender laws will hurt indigenous people's rights and religious expression from theconversation.com by Harumph. And, yeah, I guess that's, of course, if anyone who questions LGBTQ at all believes, they're just going to say, oh, you are taking away the indigenous people's rights for religious expression, they're taking away all the rights for religious expression, and, I think that's important to remember, the laws are all bad, but, it's important to remember that, it's kind of just a circle jerk at this point, how many laws there have been, and how they always like circle jerk them. UK government officially offers up nonsensical defense of criminalizing end-to-end encryption from techdirt.com by Harumph, and that is, yeah, that's interesting, I guess. I personally think if people want to do end-to-end encryption, they should be able to. It might make us less safe because they can communicate dangerous stuff over that potentially, but it's more about, I think we need to uphold freedom over safety, because right now that's something that's really important, and we need to, in the long run, I think, have freedom prevail over safety, but most people care much more about safety if the response to COVID is anything, so I think we're pretty fucked on that front, so that's my fault there. California spent $17 billion in homelessness. It's not working. It's an archive link from Harumph, an archive link from Wall Street Journal, and yeah, it's just you just can't. pay all the throw money at all the problems and have them go away like California does, or most government does. That's the thing, is you just can't solve issues for government. I would say the issues need to be solved by the people, not the government, and this is a good example of that. Exclusive: Dallas mandates transgender pronoun use from DallasExpress.com. I posted that, and I said, just for government employees currently, looks like, but you are definitely seeing a push to make it illegal across the board. I personally think misgendering people on purpose is kind of an asshole thing to do, but I don't think it should be illegal to be an asshole. And then Wolpar said, harassment is against the law and has been for a long time now. I said, you don't want the definition of harassment to be broad enough that you can arrest people for saying the wrong things, in my opinion. And that we'll see how that goes, yeah. Then we have a tweet from the Montana Mises Caucus, another one I shared. It's no longer let me be. It's agree with everything or else. It's no longer free speech for all, but only free speech for people who agree with you. It's bitter and angry, demanding that others speak in a certain way or there will be hell to pay, from Montana Mises Caucus. And I said, yeah. Look at the post. You can clearly see it's slowly but surely happening. Believe whatever you want. I think people should respect people's pronouns as much as they want to, but I don't think it should be illegal to be an asshole, misgender them. I definitely think it's getting to be illegal, and you can see it in places like Greece where they had arrested a former ex-soccer player for posts he made on Facebook that were considered transphobic. So soon I think you won't be able to have free speech at all. They see in the U.S. they will say, "Oh, with the First Amendment," but soon they've shown that the First Amendment means nothing to them, and we're gonna soon have hate speech and misinformation be criminalized, I would say. So I think I might end up in prison over some point at that. So we'll see how that happens. What happens there, yeah. VAT and sales tax around the world. It's from upload.wikimedia.org by Ruin My Circles Work. And yeah, that's how it looks like. It's generally lower in the US, most high in Europe, I think. It looks like Croatia, the Nordics, and Hungary, it's the highest. Yeah. Yeah, so that's... yeah. Next we have review Henry George's May Children by her and that's from Reason.com. And it says 19th century reformers influenced in 20th century progressives, conservatives, and libertarians. And yeah, I think you definitely see the influence of Henry George and his relatively hands-off, small government approach these days. And yeah, I think that's good that we have that he was good. Yeah, he went to my father's high school back in the day, but he didn't graduate. He went to sea instead back in the 1800s. The TV lady has been caught by ArsTechnica.com, and that's by everyone by her. And yeah, so I definitely think I don't think you should be a typhoid Mary and spread disease if you know you're sick, but I do think if you can justify, I think you should be able to, as long as you're not hurting anyone else. But I guess you could argue this is inherently hurting other people. But especially since TB is much more deadly than something like COVID. But it's important to remember that they can ultimately, the state can ultimately do whatever it wants in the name of public health, and that's important to remember because if they can take her in for any public health, who say they can't take anyone who's they deem to be sick in for public health, and that's important because soon it'll be anyone who questions narrative because the healthy democracy soon that'll be I think seen as a matter of public health. So I don't want to think you go too far in criminalizing matters for public health reasons. Utah district bans Bible in elementary middle schools due to vulgarity or violence, from NBCDFW.com by her and I definitely think if a school district wants to ban any book it wants to, it should be able to, and that includes the Bible, I would say. So that's my thought on that. YouTube abandons election misinformation policy that censored political speech from Reason. And that is by, I posted that. And I said, good, you should be able to question the results of any election you want to. That is free speech. Another user calling Clorox comment to private property. I don't like videos or treaters standing on my lawn and shouting lies either. And I said, social media needs to be held accountable and support free speech as much as possible. It's designed as a public forum, not as an individual house. So we need to support free speech, and we need to support, the letting people say what they want to, even if it could be classified as hate speech or misinformation. Because, ultimately, those in power can classify whatever they want to as hate speech and misinformation. I think that's important to remember. At TrumanCon panel on diversity, equity, inclusion featuring Pentagon officials, I asked how many equitable bombs produced by conference sponsor Lockheed Martin were dropped on kids of color in Palestine and Syria. I also asked if any non-binary U.S. Navy divers blew up Nord Stream pipeline for Max Blumenthal on Twitter, and I posted that. I said, don't forget it. And I shared a tweet from Harrison Crank, and that was the tweet of the Republicans have just the drone with the driving missiles, and it's just a plain drone. Well, the Democrats have the drone with the Black Lives Matter banner and the Pride flag on it, dropping the drones. I think it's good that he's calling out the military-industrial complex for pandering, using social justice and IDPOL. I think that's very nice. Yes, and it's nice that the military has become more accepting of LGBTQ people, but don't let distract you from the fact that there still has resulted in the countless deaths of innocent people around the world, especially in the Middle East. Then we have, in 2016, Rep. John Conyers, Democrat, warned against arming the Ukrainian neo-Nazi militia, the Azov Battalion, as he believed these white supremacist and anti-Semitic extremists will eventually use their weapons against their own people, similar to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. From Kanko on Twitter, I posted that. Time will tell if Conyers was correct, but he will 100% be labeled as a Russian asset today. It reminds me when the U.S. arms proliferated in Afghanistan caused the rise of the Taliban, as mentioned, and when the U.S. arms proliferated in Syria and caused the rise of ISIS. That's the thing. That's the thing is that the U.S. arms proliferated. Those arms can be there after the war ends, and it's important to remember that. How corporate news turns Americans against each other, from the Jimmy Dore Show on YouTube, and I posted that. And I said, it's important to hold the corporate media accountable, and I would say, yeah. So I think that Jimmy Dore's a little more on the left to me, but I think it's good that he's starting to hold me accountable, especially in the example of Colorado that Rittenhouse gives in the video, and how the media was extremely biased when it came to that, and made it seem like he was completely in the wrong, while he was actually not so much in the wrong by comparison. How many years out months, and that's the link from the LGBTQ subreddit, and it's Lion says fascism, and the LGBT bunny says, and Lion says, let me help, to the LGBT bunny, he says, let me out and I'll help you get rid of the TQ, and the LGBTQ bunny, or LGBT bunny cuts him out, and then they run out and the Lion eats him. I said, fuck fascism, but I think it's important to remember that it's possible to expand the LGBTQ acronym too far as well. Next thing you know, they made an M for maps. Okay, so that was it for the new page. See if there's anything else I want to cover on the other page, because I think we still have some time left. NFL and NBA players were encouraged, damn near forced, to wear BLM slogans for 2 years when they went to kneel during the national anthem. Yes, please. NFL baseball players say, hey, please don't openly mock my religion. They get absolutely demolished. Only one religion is allowed. Clint Russell. I'd agree with, and I posted that. I'd agree with that. The thing is that you're forced to kind of see the secular humanism / progressivism as kind of the religion of these days, and you can't disagree with any of the symbols, but if you want to do more traditional religion, you're not allowed to do that, and I think that's important to remember. Everything's a religion, I would say American people, despite you'll say, oh, we're less religious than ever if atheism rates skyrocketing, I would say we're more religious than ever, because we're all really getting into beliefs and spirituality, especially when it comes to all this progressive stuff, I would say. And let's see. I think we might wrap it up there. Let's wrap it up here. It's not fair. Group feeding the homeless outside Houston Public Library with 29 citations from ABCOverteen.com by Harumph. I definitely agree. There's too many anti-homeless laws, and I think that's important to remember. And yeah. Then we also have Texas' first state to ban students to interact with elected officials. Students has historically led social justice efforts that wouldn't be possible without contact with elected officials. From TrueValue.com by Kage, blah, blah, blah. And apparently that was, clickbait don't bother, and he said, why is it clickbait? It's, yeah, because, Texas was the first state to ban student interaction with elected officials for school credit. And yeah, I would say that's a big caveat. I agree. Well, if Reddit, you have to remember it's about pushing narrative first rather than inform people, especially when it comes to political stuff. I think that's important to remember. I would say yes. So yeah, so it's always important to remember that everyone's trying to push their agenda on you. You always have to be aware of that. So I think we'll wrap up there, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.